nerdy Halisimmer.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and this is the video of my first flight in the new X-Plane 12 flight simulator. This is the alpha release of the software, so there might be some things that are not yet implemented. However, it comes with two default helicopters, one of which is the R22 that we can see here parked on the apron of Hobart Cambridge Airport in Australia. Before you purchase X-Plane 12, definitely check out the minimum hardware requirements on their webpage. You will definitely need a GPU that is Vulkan ready, so that can handle Vulkan drivers. Also make sure that you have the latest drivers of your graphic cards installed. Alright, as you might have noticed, we have an ambient sound now. I have yet to check whether or not this ambient sound is actually dynamic, so whether or not it reacts to where your aircraft is actually positioned. Don't expect this to be a full review of what X-Plane 12 is capable of. It is merely a video of my first flight with a new helicopter flight model, which after all is probably what you guys are interested in. On the top left corner you see a readout of my frame rates. My GPU is an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060, which is just below the hardware recommendations by Lamina Research. As you can see, I'm able to run the game, but I do get huge variations in frame rates depending on where I look in the sim. I'm not going to bore you with the startup procedure, so let's fast forward. All I can say is that the startup procedure seems pretty close to real life, except, and this is actually the same as in the Aerofly FS2 version of the R22, the carb heating does not seem to be functional. Let's look at the aircraft from the outside. I do love the fact that the tail boom is sort of rocking and vibrating quite a bit. Also, the modeling of the engine is very detailed, so a great 3D model. This is the R22 Beta version, so we should look at the 0360 Lycoming 4-cylinder piston engine. We also see the magnetic compass shaking like crazy. I did see a needle split on the dual tach when rolling off throttle. The magneto check worked. The only thing that I didn't see was an increase in carburetor temperature, as well as a drop in RPM when engaging the carb heating. Alright, time for our first pickup. That's pretty exciting. I'm anticipating a little bit of a left pedal, which is the power pedal in the R22, and the cyclic will be displaced a little bit left of center. Whoops. Ah, there we go. A little bit of aft movement, so not that perfect. However, it is very solid, very stable, feels very nice. Sort of seems to be a mix between Dreamfoil's R22 and the Aerofly FS2 version. There seems to be an amount of imprecision modeled into the cyclic stick, which I kind of like. You need to do constant control inputs to keep the helicopter where you want it to be. However, it feels very natural and very nice to fly. As I nudge the helicopter into forward motion, I expect to see a pitch-up moment. There it is. So my first impression of X-Plane 12's helicopter flight model is very good. It is easy to fly, but yet it handles very realistically right out of the box, especially if you compare it to the default helicopter that came with X-Plane 11. Let's hope all the great helicopter add-ons that we have for X-Plane 11 get ported over to X-Plane 12 as quickly as possible. I think you can already download an XP12 version of Cohensim's latest release, the H125 or AS350, from his website. JRX Design also announced that they will provide X-Plane 12 versions for the B0105 and the SA341 Gazelle. However, I can't say whether or not these upgrades will be free of charge for owners of the X-Plane 11 versions. Now let's lower collective to set it down. Whoops, I apparently need more forward cyclic. You can see me slipping aft here. I do feel a slight translating tendency. The helicopter seems to hover a little bit left skid low. This might be even more pronounced if there's somebody in the co-pilot seat. The frame rates are surprisingly stable. I do have the occasional stutter and drop in frame rates, but actually never for that long. It seems that X-Plane 12 reduces the quality of textures around you in real time in order to keep constant frame rates. I haven't played around with the graphics settings at all. This is just how it came with the first install of the sim. This was probably the most frequently asked question about X-Plane 12. What about performance? If you have a new and powerful computer, you probably won't have to worry too much. On this video, however, you see the sim's actual performance on an older system. I'm going to put my specs into the description. Even though the screen capture program also takes away a few frames per second, you can see that it works quite well out here in the Tasmanian wilderness. When flying in a more densely populated area with lots of autogen buildings, maybe a lot of trees on top of that, I doubt that the frame rates will be like what we see here. But all in all, the performance of X-Plane 12 on my rather outdated system is quite a bit better than I expected it to be. ETL, or effective translational lift, is also implemented in the default helicopter flight model of X-Plane 12, as it seems. You can see some of X-Plane 12's new features, such as the 3D vegetation all around us, and finally animated water bodies. Hooray! As opposed to X-Plane 11, X-Plane 12 now features seasonal changes. But before you do get all excited, this only means that in this regard, X-Plane is now exactly where Microsoft was over 15 years ago with FSX. If you take a closer look at the shorelines or the generic scenery texturing, it becomes pretty apparent that from a visual standpoint, not too many things have changed in X-Plane 12. It looks like a jazzed version of X-Plane 11, and it cannot compete, of course, with the visuals of Microsoft Flight Simulator. However, this was never intended by Austin Meyer and Laminar Research. They rather concentrated on giving us the best flight dynamics you can find in a desktop simulator, or so they claim. The helicopter flight model of X-Plane 11 was already pretty good. You can see me fly it almost exclusively in my videos. And so far, even though I haven't done any real testing, I'm pretty happy with X-Plane 12's helicopter flight model, and I expect it to be quite a bit better than the one we had in X-Plane 11. But anyway, it's surely going to be interesting what Asobo and Microsoft will come up with come November this year. Apparently, the 40th anniversary edition of MSFS will finally feature a dedicated helicopter flight model. This will also be the time that you can expect me to finally do some videos in MSFS. As I'm coming in for an approach here, I'm going to explain to you why I'm not using my right pedal today. After approximately 14 years of service, the right pedal of my cheap plasticky Chinese-built racing pedals has broken off. As you can see right now, I could use some right pedal for directional control. However, I figured with the R22 and its counterclockwise spinning main rotor, the left pedal is going to be all I need. Of course, in real life you wouldn't fly if your right pedal is stuck or inoperable. The generic airports within X-Plane 12 look as boring as they did in X-Plane 11. Now, even though I came in a little bit high, the deceleration seemed rather convincing. No excessive floating. Apparently there has been a new computer-controlled ATC system implemented into X-Plane 12. I haven't tried that out since I use VATSIM for flying with ATC. Feel free to check out my tutorial series on flying on VATSIM and helicopter ATC phraseology. So lingering questions might be, how well will X-Plane 12 perform on your system? Well, you can see how it performs on mine. It could be better, but it definitely could be worse. And what about those aircraft and that scenery that you purchased for X-Plane 11? Will it be ported over or upgraded to be compatible with X-Plane 12 free of charge, or will you have to pay extra? Also keep in mind that this is an alpha version, so there will be major updates and fixes along the way. I do feel that upgrading to X-Plane 12 will eventually be worth it, seeing as the helicopter flight model is probably quite a bit better than what we had in X-Plane 11. It is very convincing right out of the box, and I do believe that the guys from Laminar Research listened closely to what a lot of real-life helicopter pilots on the forum had to say to further improve on their already outstanding helicopter flight simulation. It'll also be interesting to see what the dedicated developers of high-quality payware add-ons will be capable of doing with this new base model. This was my first flight in X-Plane 12. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments whether or not you plan to upgrade to X-Plane 12 or if you will continue using X-Plane 11. Also let me know what you think of the new flight model. After landing the helicopter, I will try an auto-rotation and I will try to get into vortex ring state. This was apparently broken in X-Plane 11. Let's see if they fix that. In general, this R22 is a lot of fun to fly and it's very stable and easy to fly as well, so you will like it. I had the sensitivity sliders at maximum and no stability augmentation, but even with my Microsoft Sidewinder Force Feedback 2 desktop joystick, the helicopter was very easy to control. Alright, a few more tests. This one is fairly simple. I'm going to push the stick forward without increasing the collective and the helicopter should sink. This is a very basic principle, yet not always simulated. Sorry about the poor directional control. I'm using my right pedal here, and as I've told you before, it's broken, so the control inputs can be weird from time to time. So if we are in a stable hover, the rotor thrust is just enough to keep the helicopter in the air. As I accelerate, some of that rotor thrust is being deflected forward, so the helicopter is not able to maintain its altitude unless I raise correctly. Now I want to check for the transverse flow effect. As I accelerate, I expect this helicopter to roll to the right unless I give opposing cyclic inputs. And there it is, transverse flow effect check. For a more thorough explanation of these flight characteristics, check out episode 4 of my tutorial series, How to Fly a Helicopter in a Sim. Next I'm going to check whether or not VRS is simulated. From an out-of-ground effect hover, I basically tank my collective, and as we settle into our own rotor downwash, we experience an increased rate of descent that cannot be stopped by raising the collective. I'm going to try to get out of this flying sideways. So I cannot be 100% sure, maybe it was just me losing control because I tanked the collective, but I think I just got into VRS, so I think it is modeled. Try for yourself and tell me what you think. So last but not least, an auto-rotation. There goes the throttle all the way down. Entering auto-rotation seems to be very easy. Remember, the R22 goes down fast. Maybe I'm getting a little bit slow, so recommended speed for the R22 I think is 70 to 80 knots. Anyway, the most important thing is keeping the rotor RPM in the green. It's a little bit hard to make out actually, but I think I'm good. I always felt that auto rotations in X-Plane 11 were quite a bit weird. Now I can't say the same thing about X-Plane 12. It actually feels pretty convincing, but let's wait for that touchdown here. It floats quite a bit more than the IPEX R22 for Aeroflight FS2, yet not as much as helicopters did in X-Plane 11. Yep, while this certainly needs a little bit more practice on my part, it actually worked out pretty well. Now I'm going to wrap it up here. Hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I hope to see you around next time.